Hello, welcome to Free Your Children. I'm your host, Tiffany Boyd, and our mission here at Free Your Children is to share the truth and love about education. There's a battle raging for the souls of our nation's children, and I hope this ministry equips you for battle. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. Ephesians 6:10 through 11. Welcome to the Free Your Children podcast. We've been working hard here with Free Your Children. As many of you know, if you've been following us, we are based out of Tennessee. Our ministry is a nationwide ministry, and in Tennessee, we have been in a fight for homeschool freedoms. We recently drafted the FREE Act, a piece of legislation that would have created a separate and distinct category in the state of Tennessee that would have given homeschool families and parents true educational autonomy. Unfortunately, our Tennessee state legislature chose to kill that piece of legislation. We do not consider it a loss, because what happened with that particular piece of legislation is it really shines a light on those legislators who do not believe in true freedom and who do not believe in acknowledging the constitutional rights of parents. So we're busy here in Free Your Children world, and we hope that you are following us on all of our various social media platforms. Make sure you check out our website. That's freeyourchildren.com. We have been in the process of revamping that. We have a fantastic toolkit there, so check out the toolkit. It's broken down into topics that I think you will find interesting. So check out everything that's under each individual topic. Click on those links. Make sure you take a listen to the previous podcasts that we have done. I am also a monthly contributor to the Borough Pulse. Those articles are listed on our website, and they are also listed on the Borough Pulse. That's BOROPULSE.com. You can find us on X. We have a Substack as well. You can sign up for our Substack to make sure you don't miss anything in that world. You can find us on Rumble. You can find us on YouTube. And we also have a free newsletter that you can sign up for and receive information, pertinent information, calls to action, important pieces of info that we feel like our followers need to be made aware of. So if you hop over to the website, there's a place where you can send in your information and we can add you to that email list. So we hope that you will do that. We are going to be working hard all summer long. The FREE Act it's not going away. We will bring it back next legislative session. So we'll be working hard on strategy over the summer in terms of what we can do to finally have our constitutional rights in the state of Tennessee recognized. I highly encourage you to really take a hard look at what's happening all across the nation in terms of freedoms, education. There's a lot going on. I know Illinois is currently, as of the recording of this show, in a fight for their freedoms. Georgia is also in a fight for homeschool freedoms. So if you will watch closely, you will see a common theme that is now prevalent across the United States. We are thankful that we recently had the opportunity to travel to Missouri. I spoke at the Lake of the Ozarks Homeschool Conference there, and one of the breakout sessions that I did focused on the national threats to homeschooling and things that the homeschool community needs to be aware of. I really encourage homeschool families across the nation. Now is the time to be proactive instead of reactive. You need to identify where these threats are coming from, and you need to know what the long-term agenda is behind these initiatives that are being pushed, so that you will be better equipped to protect your families, your constitutional rights, and the ability to educate your children free from government control. I am very thrilled today to have my friend on, John Klyczek. You may remember him. I've actually interviewed him in the past. He just wrote an article that is really making waves, and I'm going to bring him on today and allow him to discuss that article. I think you will be shocked, but I think it's information that you really need to know. So we're going to bring John on. Hello, John. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thanks for having me, Tiffany.
It's always an honor. John and I had the privilege of speaking together at the Cognitive Liberty Conference in Nashville. This man is brilliant. He is absolutely a wealth of information. He has an extensive pedigree. So, John, introduce yourselves to our audience. Tell them who you are and all the amazing things that you have been able to be a part of in this journey.
Okay, yeah, I'm a public educator by trade. So I teach college level rhetoric and research argumentation. I've been doing it for it's getting close to 15 years now. I teach at a couple community colleges and at one 4-year university. I got sort of into writing about education during a time shortly before Trump's first term in office, when the Illinois governor Bruce Rauner was basically stalling on passing a budget, and I saw this as a way to push public institutions, including public education, into private receivership. And he was a big school choice proponent, cradle to career proponent, school to work component, public-private partnership proponent, and he was throwing around all of the buzzwords that I had heard my mentor Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt warn about. She was not mentor as of yet, but when I wrote an article building on her research, she responded and ended up writing the foreword to my book, found my publisher for me, my big school world order, the technocratic globalization of corporatized education. For those that don't know who Charlotte Iserbyt was, she worked in the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan in his first administration, and she blew the whistle on something called Project BEST, Basic Education Skills Through Technology. It was a ploy to set up the ed tech infrastructure for what we now call the fourth industrial revolution. So it was a program to institute public-private partnerships between the federal government and also state departments of education with big tech companies that would facilitate computerized learning through software that implements B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning algorithm. So turning education into a program of psychological conditioning. And so she sort of set the groundwork for all of my research. I got to know her very well over the years. When she passed away in 2022, she gave me her entire library, which is about 90% of what you see behind you. Yeah, probably 90+% was her. I also have all of her personal files. It was about 13 file cabinets, about 34 drawers filled, lots and lots and lots of files, and much of that. Some of them provided some of the background, the historical context for the current article, which also builds on the research in my book as well.
Yeah, I love that story or experience because you lived it. What an amazing opportunity to have known her, to have been able to hear, her perspective as she lived and walked through this. And when she was working under Reagan, let's talk about a little bit about what she was, because she was the consummate whistleblower. And so, that's what she's been tagged as. I truly believe that she nailed everything that she warned about is coming to fruition today, as you and I and many others have seen. A lot of people are seeing it, but they don't know what it is, and they may not even be familiar with her work. But as she was sounding the alarm, what did she say about how that was being received?
Oh, well, I mean, she was adamant that, to use her phrase, that the conservatives had boycotted all of the literature that she had put out throughout her career. So there's a few. Her most famous is The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, and you can see the abridged version up there behind me. It's the black book with the red print. That's the abridged version. There's a big version which I have. You can't see it because it's behind this book. It's on a shelf behind my chair.
Mm-hmm.
That book largely, it's basically it's also the sublogical paper trail. So it's basically
Mm-hmm.
a history of the progression of education in America, largely emphasizing the federalization of America, sort of starting with the beginning of compulsory education in America, the importation of the Prussian system,
Mm-hmm.
she goes through sort of the evolution of that system through the funding by various nonprofit foundations, tax exempt foundations, much of which were detailed in the infamous Reese Committee hearing on tax exempt foundations. So this would be, your Rockefeller Foundation, General Education Board, which was part of that, Carnegie's various philanthropies, etc. But before that, she had written a couple shorter pieces. One is Back to Basics, and the subtitle is, I think it's Or International Skinnerian Curriculum, the subtitle to that. And then before that, she wrote an even shorter piece called Soviets in the Classroom. And the way she always described it was that if she hadn't had either of those boycotted, then she probably wouldn't have had written the big book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, which she wrote after she got out of the Department of Education.
Right.
So it largely was, to use her words, boycotted by the very people that you would think would have supported it.
Yeah. And of course, we're seeing a continuum of everything that she warned about today. And your article really drives that point home. So first off, your book, School World Order, expounds upon the research that Charlotte did, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So go ahead.
It's fantastic. I was going to tell my listeners, we will make sure we drop the links as to where you can order that book in the description of this show. If you have not read it, I highly recommend you. And I'm not getting compensated to say this. I'm saying this because it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend that you read The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America by Charlotte, and then you follow that up with School World Order by John Klyczek, because these two books together really give you a clear picture of what is happening, where it came from, where we are today, where we're headed in the future in terms of education. And because of John's unique experience to have met Charlotte and lived with her, it really, I think, gave you exactly what you needed to be able to continue her work in such great detail today.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been kind of amazing, and I just, when I first started writing, that I could get published at all was, amazing to me. But then that she would reach out to me was even more so. And then, then the next part is we, become good friends. And, I end up living with her for 30 days. And then she basically hands everything down to me. And, now I humbly have this, this tool that I can use to hopefully carry on her legacy and make her proud. Maybe at least, if not stop, slow down all this ed technocracy. But it's been more than I would have expected, and
I'm certain. I will say that there is no doubt that I'm certain that she is more than proud of the work that you are continuing to carry on, and it's so important within the homeschool community, because I like to say that we are one of the last frontiers of freedom, because our children are not in the system where we see the bulk of this happening right now. Those of us who live in an area where the homeschool community has been able to avoid the government funding our homeschools. We haven't fallen for the trap. We haven't taken the money. We still have the freedom to educate our children as we see fit without them becoming a slave to this technocratic education that you speak about. And I think that a lot of people do not understand how nefarious this whole agenda is. You recently published an article. I have it right here. I'm looking at it. The reason why this show is titled TrumpEd 2025 is because that is how your article leads in. The title of the article is TrumpEd 2025, School Choice Corporatization, Social Impact Finance, and the Dismantling of the Department of Education. So I'm going to preface this by saying that this is a ministry. I consider myself a conservative, but I do not consider myself a conservative that's on board with school choice in any capacity. I think I've made that clear from the very beginning of the ministry with Free Your Children. And I've been sounding the alarm. I've had concerns about this particular election with Trump getting elected. And this is why I said from the very beginning that so many people have put their hopes and dreams into Trump getting elected that they may not be open to seeing that what is happening, particularly in education, is more of the same. So we have watched, one thing that we sounded the alarm on was his appointment of Penny Schwinn. And of course, Penny Schwinn came from Tennessee. She was in Texas, then she was in Tennessee, then she resigned from her position as direct education commissioner in Tennessee, and then she went down to Florida. She was fired from that position, and then she was appointed by Trump. Well, the way that Penny Schwinn wound up in Tennessee was her, and this is what my insiders have told me from our capital in Tennessee, she was brought into the fold of the Tennessee, being placed in that position as the director of education because of the associations with Bill Gates and Betsy DeVos. And so that's how we wound up with her here in Tennessee. She did great damage to the state of Tennessee, from well-being child checks to pushing, CRT in Tennessee public schools. And then, of course, there's stories out of Texas, and we had some of the same experiences in Tennessee with data, from special ed students that was being used. And so your article really starts touching on a lot of things that are up close and personal to Tennessee. You mentioned Bill Lee in this article. You talk about Penny Schwinn in this article. And I'm going to let you discuss this in detail. It's a fantastic article. If you haven't read it, I've shared it on my social media platforms. I will drop the links to the article again in the show so you can go back and read it for yourself. But what I want you to do, John, is explain it as if someone is really clueless in terms of any of this. So you start out by talking about Project 2025 in your article. Can you explain what is Project 2025 and why should people be concerned?
Well, Project 2025. So this was published, I think, 2023. Certainly, it was publicized for all of 2024. During that entire year, if you were to bring this up in conservative circles, they would say that's a liberal talking point, which I like to say, well, it sounds to me like that's a right-wing deflection point. I mean, not it's a coming from whatever left-right angle. Can we look at the particulars in it, and can we look at the people involved in it, and can we look into how Trump lines up with that? So basically, if you look, it's a very large document, and it's known as the 180-day playbook for the incoming administration, and it looks at policies for all the executive branch, or all the executive departments under the executive branch. If you look at it overall, it kind of looks like, and I will say that, at a cursory glance, I mean, I'm folks staying in my wheelhouse as far as education, but if you look at, like the immigration policy and some of the foreign policy stuff, some of the FCC stuff, it looks like even those angles are very much in line with it. And overall, it very much looks like a ploy to set up what they refer to as the unitary executive, which is what the Republicans wanted to do shortly after 9/11. With sort of the Patriot Act and some of the other programs that didn't really make it all the way through. But it's essentially consolidating power in the executive, and much of what is called for as far as the restructuring of the various departments and agencies at the executive level is meant to make the president more or less a unilateral power within that distributed bureaucracy. So within education, and I should note here that a lot of people would say that Trump says that he didn't like it and he didn't read it, type of stuff. But if you look at the fact that the advisory board of Project 2025, and if you look at several authors of the education section of Project 2025, these people are all associated with an array of various think tanks that are part of the State Policy Network, which is a consortium of think tanks financed by largely by dark money from philanthropies. And, if you look at the actual policies that are put forth in there, you'll see that much of that aligns with what Trump has called for in Agenda 47, but it's also sort of what they've been doing as far as gutting some of the Department of Education stuff, but the calls for school choice certainly would align with that. And if you looked at, listen to Linda McMahon's confirmation hearing, you would hear that much of what she said also aligns perfectly with the Project 2025 agenda. So without going into particular detail, you could sort of boil it down to two angles, and one of those angles we could separate into an A and a B. So the first is to quote unquote dismantle the Department of Education. The second has to do with the school choice agenda, and the A and B parts of that would be the education savings accounts on one arm and the tax credits for scholarship granting organizations on the other arm. So we could look at the ways that those proposals in Project 2025 are being pursued by the Trump administration and Linda McMahon in particular.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot. It's like education loves acronyms. And so it almost seems as if, I know that when we were fighting against school choice in Tennessee, many of our elected officials, whether they were senators or representatives, got really angry with us when we referred to this as vouchers, and they kept saying it's not vouchers, it's a scholarship. And so we were sitting out in the audience and we were writing things on our signs to hold up, and we had written scholarships, vouchers, tax credits are all the same scam. Yeah. So and explain why these things all are the same. They're trying to make them sound better. Once a populace realizes that there are issues with vouchers, then they start calling them educational savings accounts. And then when the alarm starts being sounded on educational savings accounts, they flip the narrative to, tax credits or scholarships or whatever, they decide the flavor of the day is going to be. What's your perspective on that?
So they all expand government regulations. If you take monies or are subsidized in any way by any of these vehicles, they're going to come with government strings attached. So in that regard, they are their point essentially the same. Rhetorically, they're different in the way that you suggest, which is right. They sort of they create some distance between the baggage associated with vouchers proper, but there are some nuanced differences that also functionally them seem more palatable as well. So with a voucher, typically what you have is right, basically a check, right, or some payment handed to a family, and then that can be used to purchase or pay for private tuition at a private school, whether religious or otherwise. And so that voucher is right. It's stipulated specifically for private schools that are certified and eligible and signed up for the program.
Yes.
For the tax credits, especially for the scholarship granting organization. So one of the things that one of the difficulties they had with passing vouchers is that the way that the financial system is set up, arguably people would make the case that, well, you're taking public dollars and subsidizing religious organizations. So with the scholarship granting organizations, what they do is they put a middleman in there so they could say, no, we didn't send the money directly to the religious organization. We sent it to the scholarship granting organization. And if you look at ECCA, the Educating Children for Choice Act, which is promoted in the Project 25 document, the scholarship granting that bill is stipulated that the government cannot regulate the scholarship granting organization, which gives them right, which enables them to well, funnel the money into a religious school, but also they can use other provisions like what are called pay for success, impact investment schemes. So they'll be giving the money to achieve. The scholarships will be geared toward achieving particular outcomes, and we won't dive too much into that quite yet because I want to distinguish also how the ESAs, the Education Savings Account, are yet a different category. This one will come with more. So we don't really have a middleman here. This is where basically say that the funds are the parents, right? In the Education Savings Account, instead of giving you a stipend that pays for tuition, you get a basket of monies that you can use, yes, for private school tuition, but it can also be for quote unquote curricular materials, quote unquote education therapies, quote unquote personal tutors, right? So in other words, these could be textbooks or speech pathologists, human beings, right, that hire to supplement, but it could also be ed tech products. So in the education savings account, basically, the voucher is money stipulated specifically for a school, go straight to it. Tax credits for the scholarship granting organizations create this loophole where you can sort of have a middleman so that you can subsidize the religious organizations, but still hold them to particular, we'll call them corporate regulations or that determine, right, who gets the scholarships and what you have to do to keep the scholarships. And then in the education savings account, you have a basket of money that can be used not only for the school tuition, but also a range of ed tech products. In the education savings account, all of the state bills that I've looked at do come with regulatory strings attached. So that money will bring about regulations on the state, the private schools that receive it. So if you look at the Alabama State Choose Act, one case study, right, what you'll have to comply with the standardized testing, but also health code regulations. So if you were a homeschooler because you wanted to get away from the mandates, in this scenario, if you took that money and come across a scenario where we have mandates again, right? That would, in that instance, right, you'd be mandated to get your experimental therapy to keep your ESA money. So that those are the nuances, but ultimately there are ways to expand corporate and government control of home schools and private schools that would otherwise be autonomous from the corporate government system.
Yes, I recently spoke in Alabama. Actually, it was right after they had just passed the Choose Act. They had not even divulged to the public all of the specifics of that program. It was a pass the bill, and then we'll tell you what this is going to look like afterward situation. And so it was very important that I explained to the group of freedom-minded people that we were having, that was holding this seminar for us, what the bigger picture was and what it looked like. And I actually just wrote an article. It's the most current article that's listed on our website. And I took a snapshot of different states that have already passed school choice and what those strings are looking like in those states. And it was absolutely jaw dropping to see what was really behind the scenes in terms of what the families were going to be required to do in order to utilize these programs. We knew that it was coming, but to see it in black and white and to pull excerpts from the actual program to see what they were going to be required to do spoke volumes. And then, of course, what I've been noticing and the work that I've been doing is that within these programs, vendor lists are created. And so that's where your private public partnerships enter in, because when they are making a determination, most of these programs have stipulations that the money that you're going to be utilizing for particular programs, they're not just going to say, here, you take the money, go purchase whatever you want to. In order to be reimbursed, because in a lot of these instances, there is a reimbursement process you have to go through or an approval process. So you have to choose a private business, a vendor that is on the state's list before you can even utilize their services. And of course, that even includes your counselors, your therapists, those that are going to be capitalizing on all of this mental health data that is being, collected off of the kids. So when we start talking about public-private partnerships, this middleman that you were speaking about for the scholarships, they would be considered a private business, correct?
Yeah, it's a corporation, right?
Mhm.
It's profit, but it's private. Yeah, it's a private entity.
Right.
Scholarship granting. Sometimes they also call them scholarship funding organizations, so SGO or SFO, and the ECC SGOs, but there's SFOs that would be qualify as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that is particularly concerning because many of these, especially if they're organizations, they likely have, appointed boards and they're not sunshineable. So taxpayers' dollars are being used to fund these private organizations that have no accountability to the taxpayer. Is that a good summarization of how this is working?
Yeah. And the other thing is that, okay, for the SGOs are funded. The tax go to the people that donate to the SGOs. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it could be individuals or it could be corporations. Well, if the average individual had enough money to pool into a scholarship grant, a fund for school choice, we wouldn't need a provision for this necessarily, right? Like, I mean, the amount of spare money you would have if you don't have enough to put into your own child's education, where's the bulk of this extra money going to come from? It's going to come from either very wealthy donors or the corporations that those people own. So the funding, and those people are going to select the SGOs that they want to provide money to. A lot of SGOs are what are known as impact investing organizations. So impact investment, it's a sort of an umbrella term. There's different vehicles for it. There's social impact bonds, there's human capital bonds, there's pay for success contracts. In the Every Student Succeeds Act, there are specific provisions for pay for success contract. The way that these work is that a private entity will put money up front for this pay for success outcomes based investment. And then based on the extent to which it achieves those outcomes, it will be reimbursed or perhaps will receive more than the total it put in, might receive a profit. If it's a nonprofit company, it just has to funnel it back into more scholarship granting organizations or more of the scholarships, or could obviously be used to cover, expenses within the actual nonprofit. But the way that this works is that those outcomes are going to be geared usually towards, well, a lot of them, such one example would be what's called the Point Foundation. This one emphasizes improving educational outcomes for LGBTQB IPOC populations. But there's others that emphasize basically just kind of workforce development outcomes, right? So to improve socioeconomic outcomes. And these, so on the left there, where the Point Foundation would basically be a scholarship granting organization that's going to engage in educational impact investments that would sort of fall under the S part of ESG social credit scoring. So environmental, social, and governance scoring. These are sort of the corporate social credit scoring system created or pushed by the World Economic Forum for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The S part being the social part, being the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion part. For people that think that maybe Trump, he axed all of that with his executive orders. You should note that most of those actually only rescind DEI provisions in previous executive orders, many of which have nothing to do with education. Insofar as the ones that pertain to education, they don't repeal the DEI provisions in the ESSA or the PFS DEI provisions in ESSA for all to spin your head with acronyms there.
Yes. So basically, what you're saying is it didn't go anywhere.
No, I think ultimately what we're doing is we're going to use the woke DEI boogeyman as the impetus or the justification to chainsaw any semblance of a public institution that might actually hold back a total corporate autocracy. But I do want to note that there's several organizations that you might that do not emphasize the woke sociocultural outcomes, but do emphasize the workforce-based socioeconomic outcomes. These include several of the think tanks that I referred to earlier, which are connected to the authors of the education section of Project 2025. So one is the American Enterprise Institute. Max Eden wrote a piece for the AEI, which he's promoting impact investing for school choice. Okay, another one is EDGE, formerly known as the Milton and Rose Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice. Burke, who is the main author of the education section of Project 2025. She, I believe, is a fellow at EdChoice. She's also, I think it's a distinguished fellow or director of something at Heritage. And Heritage Foundation is the main author of Project 2025. Also involved is Jonathan Butcher, who's at Heritage Foundation, and then another impact investment organization that would be connected to all these. Part of this state policy network would be the Charles Koch Foundation. It might be worth noting one more thing, which is, for those that still might be on the fence about whether or not Trump likes Project 2025 or whether he believed it or not, maybe he should have read it, because if he doesn't know anything about it, he doesn't know enough to realize that he's going along with it. But I really don't even buy that, because Charlotte told me once upon a time that if you are in a Republican administration at the White House or at any of the executive departments, on day one, you get the Heritage Foundation playbook. That's the way it was in 1981 when she got there. I'm pretty confident that's the way it was when Trump was there the first time around, because when Charlotte was there, Edwin Meese III, council professional policy member, was on the administration. He's a Heritage guy, and this man was also on the transition team Trump's first term. So I'm pretty sure he's familiar with getting the Heritage Foundation playbook. And so all things point to Project 2025 and the think tank networks pushing for the impact investments that would come through the scholarship granting organization.
I would agree with that. His appointment of Penny Schwinn, she has ties to EdChoice as well. And, she's a Democrat, and, she ushered a lot of this into Tennessee. So I'm seeing a lot of similarities. It's also especially concerning as a native of Tennessee to see our Governor Bill Lee, involved in this continual push for school choice. We pushed back last legislative session against school choice. We happened to beat it back then. Of course, this year they held a special session because this was our governor's pet project. I know that he had met with Trump. You actually included that in this particular article. I'm looking at it right now. It says that Project 2025 ball rolling by convening a National School Choice Week roundtable where he hosted Republican governors, including our governor in Tennessee, Bill Lee, and Abbott's Lieutenant Governor, Daniel Patrick, advising them on how they can capitalize on the school choice grants pending from his new EO 14191. So we knew that Governor Lee's pet project was going to be school choice, that his goal was to pass this. We know through his tenure here in Tennessee, I sounded the alarm about his globalist positions on, many pieces of legislation in Tennessee. We are definitely marching towards globalism at breakneck speed here in our state. So to see this included in your article was very telling, in my opinion, about where we are as a state and, where our governor lands and in the big trajectory of this. We did pass it this year in our special session. He actually made sure that it was all rolled up into a big omnibus situation with the disaster relief for East Tennessee. So they were individual bills, but for East Tennessee to be able to utilize or to be able to obtain this disaster relief funding, the legislature, it was all rolled up in the fiscal note of all of these bills. So the money was all attached to one big omnibus bill. So it was pass it all or none. So they rammed school choice down our throats in Tennessee when they knew that the general population, upwards of 70%, was opposed to that. And they used all the same talking points. This will put parents in the driver's seat. No one is more equipped than parents to educate their children as they see fit. However, when we propose the Free Act legislation, which would do that without being attached to government monies and government control, those same Republicans who stood on that platform and stated they believed parents were the most qualified to educate their children, they believed in school choice and putting parents in the driver's seat, they unanimously voted down in the House Education Administration Subcommittee the Free Act. So, what does that say?
I mean, that says it all, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, I've had people like, no, that's not how it works. They don't come with strings attached. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I showed the Alabama State Choose Act,
Mm-hmm.
and you've noted others.
Mm-hmm.
When McMahon was questioning the confirmation hearing, the best question that was asked out of the entire hearing came from Senator Blunt Rochester. She asked essentially, if private schools take education savings account money, will they be required to enroll students with disabilities? And McMahon goes, oh, she starts to try to dance around and kind of filibuster. And Blunt Rochester says, it's a yes or no answer. She goes, I don't think it's a yes or no answer. And she goes, well, I don't have time for you to go on and on. I got other questions. You can, if you want to articulate your response, you can do that in writing and send it to me. Okay, so we never got the answer. But the fact that, right, it is yes or no answer. And the fact that you can't say that tells us exactly what this is. And, your example of your bill, which we talked about this beforehand, it wasn't a bill to stop or prevent them from handing out the ESAs or whatever school choice funds you had. It was just, hey, you guys are going to do that, but we want to be a separate category where we can be independent of that.
Correct.
And they're like, right. So in other words, it's not stopping them from doing what they're doing. Just give some parents a choice that they want to have that's not in this basket of choices that they have approved.
Yes.
So if it's all about parental choice, then they should have had no problem with that. And if it's not about bringing in private schools and home schools and religious schools under government control, they shouldn't have had a problem with that. That lets you know that is the point of this whole thing, and that's why it has been such an important legislative issue the last couple of years. What they call the year of school choice was it 2023, 2024, right? Because of many states that had put forth these bills,
right?
And as you know, right, there was Abbott was trying to primary. I think he did primary several people that wouldn't support it because they know that this platform is incredibly important. For Project 2025, I could say, but there's another angle to it that I think dovetails with a larger reform that I think we might see, and that is a financial overhaul. We see that Donald Trump wants us to be a crypto capital, AI capital of the world, right? We've got these reserve cryptocurrencies now. One of the things that people want to do, well, Jonathan Butcher is one of them. He's one of the Project 2025 authors that I mentioned. He's at Heritage. He wrote a piece. He's saying that education savings accounts should be facilitated through fintech, through using things like Class Wallet or Odyssey. And some of these companies are looking into blockchain, right? So in other words, right, I think that part of the reason why this is so important isn't just because it's the nail in the coffin for the last little bit of actual free schooling that isn't under corporate government control, but it's also integral to the financial overhaul that they want to create. And I should know, just an interesting little note here. So Odyssey is one of these fintech platforms, because you mentioned the vendors that are going to be. So one of the things they're saying is the reason why we need that is because to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. That's mantra, right? Oh, there's some DEI or some woke over there, or some waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Get the chainsaws and then go ahead and cut it. But if you looked at Odyssey, well, that's financed by Andreessen Horowitz. Mark Andreessen being in the Peter Thiel sphere, and one of the venture capital firms that funds it, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. This is going to be my next article. I'm working on it right now. But this other venture capital firm that's financed Odyssey has Palantir in its portfolio. So like sort of the broligarch, the tech bros that are behind Trump are heavily invested in the fintech ecosystem. I mean, you know, Thiel and Musk, PayPal Mafia, right? The pioneers of fintech, right? And this dovetails with the ed tech products that will be subsidized with the ESA money through the fintech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we already know that. Well, Class Wallet already utilizes blockchain, and we know that their data has already been breached in Arizona. There was a huge situation in Arizona where many of those children who were, participating in IDEA, and so their private information of those students, was out there, for the world to see. So, why do you believe, or explain, I guess, for people who may not understand, why are these corporations, organizations, individuals so invested in the data mining? Why do they want the data?
Well, there's basically two threads. All of it has to ultimately do with, building, the technocracy. And so one is basically data mining to build artificial intelligence. And the other one is data mining for social credit analytics. So as I lay out in my book, there's sort of I look at a progression of technologies that data mine an array of biopsychosocial algorithms from students. So you have like the cognitive behavioral algorithms or the thinking algorithms that can be data mined through adaptive learning courseware. This is the digital version of B.F. Skinner's teaching machine. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you have the social emotional algorithms that can be data mined from what are called feedback wearables. These can be things like heart math, EKG readers. So they data mine heart rate can be used. It's ostensibly used for managing test anxiety with breathing techniques associated with the wearable. You have other biofeedback wearables that data mine the students' brain waves, their EEGs, and one company in particular known as NeuroCore. I'm pretty sure it's funk now. I haven't been able to find any links to it that work anymore, but that was once upon financed by Betsy DeVos. I think she was on the board of trustees or the board of directors or something like that. I should note that Peter Thiel is also invested in some adaptive learning products such as Clever and Newton. So between these, and then you have something like Moxie Robot, which is like a emotional. Well, it can be an academic tutor, but it's largely designed to help students that are on the autism spectrum to identify emotions and to parse emotions based on facial expression. So runs on what's called a social X GPT. So most generative AIs usually are they're all large language models in that they're language prompted, but some of them, right, are specifically programmed to scan the internet writ large for patterns in speech and text to respond appropriately with patterns of speech and text. Now you have generative AI that can do the same thing with images or music, right? It's just data mining, right? And then it comes up with a pattern based on your prompt. It's doing the same thing. The social GPT X at social GPT, like through Moxie, it's doing the same thing, but with facial recognition, right? With facial expression.
Yeah.
Right? So in other words, each of these different types of ed tech products is data mining, different type of algorithm that can be used for generative AI. And once you piece them all together, you can put the building blocks together for what they call AGI, artificial general intelligence, which can essentially combine all of that to mimic as much as possible human consciousness. So that's the data mining to build the AI. Then the AI basically becomes sort of the digital big brother that's going to then scan all of your particular algorithms as a student, your group analytics as a classroom, right? Your systems dynamics as a particular school district, and determine maybe what might be the particular career pathways for students in that area, or what types of impact investments they should get. Ultimately, determining, breaking these algorithms down into social credit analytics that are going to determine the students' access to the public square, commercial services, everything from transportation to jobs to hotels, healthcare, etc. And so those are really the ways in which digital has become the new oil, because that's where all of the value is, but it's also the fuel that's going for the tech engine that's going to be our social credit panopticon.
Yeah. So big money. That data is so very valuable in order to get to the next step in this agenda. And I think that that's what people need to understand. When you were speaking about Moxie and the different ways that they were being able to harvest this data, one particular way that that was also happening in Tennessee was through a product called Mirror by Swivel. And the kids would walk up to the mirror and it would read their facial expressions, and it would garner the data based on their responses, and it would pick up on inflections and determine if these children, if there was something more that need to be addressed in terms of could they potentially be at risk. And of course, that's another big push, is the medicalization of schools and the identifying children who are at risk. And the National Governors Association's created a playbook about how to identify these children. And of course, this all falls in, to the bigger plan here. And so I was really it was very interesting to me also that you included ALEC in the article that you wrote, because I've been sounding the alarm on ALEC for quite some time. And of course, ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council. So why should people be so concerned about it? They've heard it from me before, but I want them to hear it from someone else, a totally different perspective. Why do you think that people need to be concerned about ALEC?
So ALEC is another one of these organizations that's part of that Koch-funded state policy network. They're essentially a consortium of lobbyists and lawyers who write boilerplate legislation that's always geared towards privatization. And then they take those boilerplate bills and they hand them out to various state legislators and federal as well. And then they take the boilerplate. Sometimes they just pretty much copy and paste it and run with it. Sometimes they to clean them up a little bit, make them look a little bit more original. And then those are used to basically get these privatization schemes put in place. So in the realm of education, there's a few different boilerplate bills that they've drafted. So there's one on education savings accounts. Oh, there's the third one. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's in the article. There's a screenshot up to it. But the other one that I've talked about at length and is explicated in my book is the Virtual Public Schools Act. And the Virtual Schools Act is based on so this is a boilerplate bill that basically got the ball rolling to institute public funds to be funneled into online virtual charter schools. And these would become the first online platforms where you could plug in your adaptive learning courses, other various apps and widgets that could data mine, that extract all the data we've laid out. One of the first, there was a couple other smaller ones that were pilots, but really the first big one was K-12 Inc. The founding chairman of 12 Inc. was Bill Bennett, who is an associate of ALEC. Betsy DeVos, an associate of ALEC. Betsy DeVos financed K-12 Inc. The seed funding for K-12 Inc. came from Larry Ellison, who envisions a world in which, there'll be AI nodes and cameras everywhere ready to deploy drones for if we get any of those red flag signals that you're mentioning for these at-risk students. But ALEC, when they wrote that Virtual Public Schools Act, one of the task forces that they had representatives from K-12 Inc. They also had representatives from Connections Academy, another virtual online school bill, and it was also based on this bill, or this boilerplate bill was based on the 10 elements of high quality digital learning that was set up through Jeb Bush's Digital Learning Council. And some of the people that were part of Jeb Bush's as a foundation for educational excellence end up on DeVos's at her Department of Education. One of the people on the digital learning was Kevin Chavis, who's also is he VP or he's high up at K-12 Inc. He's also been at American Federation for Children, which is financed by
Of course.
DeVos. And so, you know, it's a tight little group of folks there. And I should note that so some of the authors of Project 2025, in particular Jim Blue and Robert S. Eitel, they were part of Betsy DeVos's administration under her secretariat. So, you know, Alex is basically got the ball rolling and set up sort of the baseline for the online virtual charter schooling industry, which charter schools is right. It's the first
Yes.
pillar of school choice.
Yes, yes. I often say, because we've had some organizations and individuals in our area claim that they are opposed to school choice, but then they will promote charter schools. And I have sounded this, and I'm going to repeat it again today. You cannot claim that you are opposed to school choice and then promote the charter school network, because it literally is, just as you said, the first leg of school choice. Yeah.
And it's not. I was going to say it, you know, people think it's, you know, school choice, right wing conservative. Well, you should know that the concept of charter schools was coined by Albert Shanker. He's the president of the American Federation of Teachers Union. He was a big Democrat. You should know that the first federal charter school bill that was ever passed was done under the Bill Clinton administration. And you should know that charter schools probably got their widest boom under Barack Obama, who appointed Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, who as a Secretary of Ed, his background was that he basically privatized the entire Chicago public schools system, setting up charter schools and community schools. Okay, because that's another form of public-private partnerships. Yep. But so you have there's been as many left. That guy Kevin Chavis I mentioned, he was on Obama's he was, I think, his transition team for one of his elections. I can't remember the particulars, but if you go to the article, the exact citation is there. But right, he's another one. He's a Democrat that's elbow to elbow with with Jeb Bush and Betsy DeVos.
Yeah.
Right.
So you keep seeing the same names circulating. Anytime you start digging into this research, it's the same individuals that are all popping up that are controlling or seem to be driving this agenda. What do you think? What is your opinion on the future of education? If we keep going on this trajectory, what do you think it's going to look like? I have said that I fully believe that the long-term goal, if we don't stop this train, will look like students being held in, I won't even say classrooms, buildings where their education consists of being pumped in digitally, and there's not going to be teachers that what we consider a teacher in a classroom that we see today, but everything is going to be digitized. I keep going back to the whole idea of the book Brave New World and what that looked like, and that is exactly the trajectory that I see us taking in the United States. I see them hiring individuals to be in buildings with children, monitoring them as they are going through their educational process, which is going to be via technology. That's it.
Yeah. So, or another way to say is you'll have a human being monitoring the AI to make sure that it's not hallucinating in terms of its predictive analytics. I would agree with that. I might have a slightly different vision of what it looks like at the end product, and I think that they will as much education, as much conditioning as can be achieved at home through various devices will be done. And in doing so, right, we can attach more and more government surveillance and regulation to what goes on in the home as a byproduct, and then the bulk of what you will do in an actual brick and mortar school building will be in the community schooling model. So basically, all of the actual buildings will be community charter schools. So
yeah, there's legislation right now, this legislative session in Tennessee for community schools. And I've written about that as well. That is the push. I will also say that Tennessee last legislative session passed a bill allowing at-risk boarding charter schools. So I really feel like, I mean, Arnie Duncan said it best. He wanted children to reside at these schools 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He wanted them to live there. And I really feel like, that's the long-term goal, because then the children really are property of the state.
Yeah, and the community school right now we have community schools. Some of them actually can have an elected board. Like some of them are considered public schools. What makes them a community school, what makes them a full, quote unquote, full service community school under the Every Student Succeeds Act is what are called pipeline services, otherwise known as road services. So this is where the school facilitates public-private partnerships with healthcare industry, workforce training industry for in-demand industries, maybe like a recidivism program for at-risk youth or something like that. It'll also have maybe some recreational stuff. It'll have maybe some adult ed for seniors that need to get retrained or just want to, learn some stuff in their retirement. And that's kind of the Shirley McCune model, where she describes sort of what you lay out. It's sort of one-stop shop for the whole, for all things. But a community charter would be one in which it's a built an institution that has the wraparound services, but does not have an elected school board, because it's a charter.
Exactly.
So it's a private company that has a corporate appointed board. You can't vote out, and then they enter into other wraparound partnerships with other corporations. And then they're going to largely facilitate all those services I laid out, while the rest of your lessons or conditioning or training will be facilitated through some sort of AI module through your device at home.
Absolutely. And we have adopted both of those models in the state of Tennessee. We are fully invested in both of those, both the at-risk boarding charters that will provide those services, and the public community school, which will be a public school, and then the charter school version of that as well. So it's what do you hope people learn from your article, John?
Well, I mean, the first thing I hope they learn is that school choice is a pretty little ism that doesn't mean what it sounds like, kind of like Patriot Act. The choices that you're giving, you don't get to choose your choices. Right, the choices are pre-selected. That I guess maybe this is a good analogy to kind of encapsulate what I'd like for them to take away as far as what the school choice plan really does. So I before I work out, especially if I do a long run, I'll drink an energy drink occasionally, and I stopped into the gas station to get one the other day, and there was the vendor who was stocking the refrigerator with it, and he's like, "Oh, you drink those? I work for that company. Let me buy you one. We take care of our customers." He was a nice guy. And then he proceeds to tell me everything about the company. And it was interesting. I like, I learned that. Well, come to find out, basically every energy drink integrator is owned by Monster. I mean, there's different companies, there's different labels, there's different products. And then come to find out that a big chunk of Monster is owned by Pepsi. So this is basically right. So there's your choices. Choose your choice. They're all owned by GovCorp, basically, right? That's what I think you should get out of this, that the choices you have will be limited, that they will all come with government strings attached, that they will all come with corporate data mining, that even if the regulations are to start off minimal, all they need is the first scandal where students, a family misused their funds or name it, and now we bring in more regulation, and so this will be the final nail in the coffin. If you really want to not be in the government schools and you want to be free from the corporate technocracy, this is the uphill struggle. It's this long route. It's the more difficult route. But if the only way to do this is to abstain from taking that money, otherwise, you're actually getting a choice and you're not actually getting freedom.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. What do you think people can do? What would be your advice to someone about making a difference? What do you think the best course of action for them to take, other than not taking the money, would be?
Well, to find as many like-minded people as you can find to pool your resources and your ideas together to create your pod or your co-op. Not
Mhm.
this term micro school and they're talking about giving some of this. I don't mean to open it up another issue, but I'm hearing throw DeAngelis. Corey
Oh yeah.
DeAngelis was on Jordan Peterson the other day.
Mhm.
I don't want to digress into that. I have lots to
Yeah,
say.
me too.
But they kept throwing around the idea of micro schools and
Mhm.
how, oh, you use your school choice money for your micro school. And he describes a micro school as basically a co-op or a pod. So like just specifically, I mean, that's like a target, right? So,
Yes.
but if you can, right, find those other people in your neighborhood and right, sort of get on the same page as far as collectively together, not taking that money and coming up, doing
Mhm.
something like you tried to do in Tennessee, where
Mhm.
try to have a protected class of homeschooling that doesn't fall under this umbrella. Those are pretty much the only things that I know that can be done at this point. To be totally honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I will add to the fact education. So much more education needs to happen. Every single time I do a seminar or go somewhere to speak, especially when I'm speaking on school choice, I will ask how many of you here are familiar with Charlotte Iserbyt's work. Very few people are. So I think continuing the education is so important. But I want to thank you, John, for being willing to do this interview, for the work that you're doing. Again, when this interview airs, I will drop the links to where you can find John's book, School World Order, and a link to his article. I highly encourage you to read it and to share it. And if you happen to be in an area where John is speaking, I highly encourage you to go out and listen to what he has to say. We need more education and we need more people sounding the alarm. So thank you again, John, for being willing to come on. It was an honor to have you on as always, and I'm hoping to do it again soon.
Definitely, anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today with Free Your Children. Know that we love you here at Free Your Children, but Jesus loves you so much more. Please take the time to educate your own communities and networks. If you have a leadership position within the homeschool community, please make sure that they're educated about where school choice came from, where we are today, and where we're headed in the future. If you have an interest in scheduling a seminar where we do a deep dive into that, you can find more information on our website at freeyourchildren.com. Feel free to send us an email if you have questions about what those look like, and we would be happy to get that information to you. If you are interested in sponsoring Free Your Children, send us an email again at freeyourchildren@gmail.com, and we will be happy to get a sponsorship packet out to you. Please know that we cannot do this or continue to do the work we do without supporters. So we appreciate any help that you are willing to, send our way if you find our work valuable. Again, thank you so much and have a great day.